Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Arnis Luks here at the Freedom Forum, and I'd like to welcome Yves Potvin from Canada. Welcome, Yves.
Yeah, hello.
No worries. Pleased to have you. Always pleased to have you. How's the weather in Canada?
Right now, the last few days have been quite hot, but not unbearable. It's in the 30s.
hmm
Humidity is at 38, 37, 36.
hmm
But now it's going to start to cool down, I think, a little bit for the next. And I think we might get more hot weather. I don't know. But this is the time of year where it starts to, wind down. And
hmm
you can see the corn is quite high. The the harvest is being almost seen that it's going to happen soon.
Yep.
So, I mean, we're heading towards school starts next week or 2 weeks.
hmm
So everything is going to change in the next couple of weeks. But the weather in August usually is really good.
Okay. Beautiful.
Not like June, July. What about
Yeah.
your weather?
Okay. Well, we're mid-teens, hovering between 13, 18, and 19, depending on the day. A little bit of rain. The ground is reasonably wet. The grass is plentiful. The animals are certainly grazing comfortably in the paddocks, and it looks like the fruit trees. Some of them are in blossom, so it's just coming up to a spring, early spring, and cherries and almonds. Of course, almonds were a few weeks ago, but cherries are in now, so as in the blossom. So it's a pretty time of year, and I do note that my bees are starting to move a bit more and they're out in the middle of the day and they're into the trees that do have blossom on. So the bees are becoming active, which is good. Hmm,
Yeah, that's good.
no worries. All right, our title subject for today, the social dividend, and I wanted to actually lay the groundwork for it and then open it to Eve to continue on. Right now, we're looking at if you like, the expansion and development of the nation of China. Now, whatever political system it is, it's still the nation of China is expanding and developing, and it's certainly making inroads into manufacturing and even defence. And as I understand it, the standard of living in China is improving. So that in itself is a good thing. But the fact is that other nations, their industries are winding down. And what is now being manufactured in China is not being manufactured in other nations. They're actually handing over manufacturing to China because of labour costs and perhaps, believe it or not, stable electricity and things like this, and maybe a stable political system. Who knows? But there are reasons for it. But in the course of that eventuating, what's going on now is that a lot of people are becoming unemployed. In fact, the unemployed lines are growing because the industry is going offshore. So nations like Australia, I'm assuming the same as Canada, are actually looking at a change in their, if you like, their industrial relationship. They're not so independent or self-reliant. They're becoming reliant on other nations for their basic needs. Now, 200 years ago, this sort of significant cultural shift was going on in Britain with the Industrial Revolution, with steam power and things like that coming in, and of course the early stages of industry when they were manufacturing cotton and the woolen industries and that were predominantly in Britain, and it was a very strong player. So the British were able to move ahead at other nations' expense because their technology wasn't as advanced. Whereas nowadays the technology is actually being handed over to third world nations in order to exploit cheap labour and modern technology. So we get this double whammy, if you like. The West is getting a double whammy. And you've got to ask the question, how can we work this through so that people are able to purchase what is actually in the shelves, in the shopping centres, in the hardware stores, and all that sort of stuff? We've got to ask this question because no one is actually asking it. And of course, the only supposed answer on the table is taxation from those that have to those that don't. But I believe that it's much more than that. Anyway, Eve, open to you.
Yeah. I remember a story that Someone wrote over 200 years ago, before the Industrial Revolution, people were working in the fields, and everybody was had to do something to get food, to get to do a living. Now, if we look 200 years from now, we can see the robot revolution, or the machinery, the technology, the science will be at such a point that nobody needs to work. We're going to we're going to do with the technology. We're going to be able to manufacture food and everything else. So what do we do then? Nobody is working. So how do you get something? So we have to have some kind of a dividend to, in those days, to be able to live properly.
Mhm.
Now we're in the present, of course. We're not in the past, or we're not in the future, but we must be about 50% of the way there, at least.
Mhm.
So it's time to look at a dividend, not a welfare state, not a taxation backed up uh, salary kind of thing. You got to look at something like a dividend. So many years we've been building the countries, beautiful schools, beautiful bridges, but we only show a debt. We only show. It's gotta come down to this. We either use tell the people to use the products as their wealth. The product is the wealth, not the money. Money is only a representation of the product. And if there isn't enough of it, there isn't enough to purchase all the goods that are available. And that's not counting the natural resources, we talked about before, the sun, the waters, the rivers, the wind. All this is given to us. So there's got to be some kind of a dividend, and the social credit movement has been advocating a dividend for years and years and years,
Mhm.
even a salary to the mother at home.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, Eve. And I might point out that with robots, automation, advanced control, there is no spending power being issued to the community. So what the actual machines are making, there is no, if you like, corresponding spending power available in the community to purchase what the machines are making. So of course the industries are always vying for markets. They're competing. When it's, to me, it's completely unnecessary to compete if you're able to liquidate the cost of production. And that's part of what the dividend is about. It's about recognizing that industry, the technological age, has so developed to a stage where productive capacity is so huge, one nation like China can produce just about everything for the rest of the world. This, in my view, is entirely unnecessary because there's no reason why each nation shouldn't be producing everything that it needs. But it's a political policy, if you like, to hand over industry under the Lima Declaration to third world nations. Our leaders were signatories to that. They never should have done it, but they did it, and that's why our industry shut down. But the thing is that you come back to, if you like, self-reliance. Why wouldn't you have your own car manufacturing or white goods manufacturing or steel manufacturing or shipbuilding manufacturing or home building? Why wouldn't you have all of these industries readily available where you live, in your communities, in your larger cities at least, so that they're diversified? And of course, power generation, utilities like water, gas, and that sort of thing, telephone, also diversified. So you're not actually susceptible to one small failure and all of a sudden the lights go out to a whole city. You've got multiple resources. These things to me are most important because it's what it's doing is it's undoing this self-reliance. It's undoing love of self, love of community, almost love of nation. That we're proud of our nation. We think we can do anything that we put our mind to. And what we put our mind to should be also have the credits to be released so that we can actually initiate it. So finances should be working for us. But unfortunately, the money system is one of incurring debt and progressive debt and irredeemable debt. You've only got to look at the debt clock. And it's skew-whiffed. It's skew-whiffed to the point where, of course, every nation is in debt. And that is the complete perversion of what is going on in the natural world. The natural world there is so much out there. The record harvests, the record productive capacity of industries, of white goods, of cars, of clothing, of everything. It's there, bountiful, but we don't actually have the spending power. So we have production sorted. Technology gives us production. We have the people willing to consume. What we haven't got is an equitable distribution system. And that's what, if you like, the social dividend, it actually nails it right on the head because it places choices in the hands of the individual, not the central government, but in the hands of the individual. It's actually if you like, a distribution of purchasing power like an economic vote. Economic democracy, in fact, is one of the titles of the Douglas Social Credit books. Eve.
Yeah, this I have a saying here on our book on the dividend. It's a whole leaflet. Uh, it's like the true masters of this world, the efficient financial system, and our third one is the dividend.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing on the first page, it says, very important. Did you know that the social dividend could save the planet, but consumerism will destroy it? I remember seeing this cartoon, and the guy becomes the king of the earth, and he gathers all these wealth, and he gathers everything, and everything is garbage, really. And he ends up at the end of the little cartoon film on top of a mountain of garbage,
Mm-hmm.
TVs and everything else. He says, "No, so I've gathered everything here.
Mm.
I'm the king."
Mm.
What are you the king of?
Mm.
So, uh, so a social dividend. The only thing is, like, people are, when you mention dividend, when they receive a dividend from their company or the bank or something like that, they don't get scared. I mean, they've invested and they've got a dividend from that.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned dividend from a dividend. What are you talking about?
Mm.
You know, where are we going to get the money to do that? Then that's what you have to explain to the people, that it can come from the already produced wealth that we have.
Yeah.
We already have wealth.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, who is controlling the money? Who's creating and controlling all the money and doesn't give us access to this dividend? We're supposed to receive a dividend anyway.
Mm.
We kind of receive a dividend, but they've somehow put it under a debt system. Like, you have a debt with that.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of getting a dividend, you have a debt.
Yeah.
And the national debt and everything else is behind the scenes. Yeah, you owe that money. I mean, it's ridiculous. The debt system is got to be changed. We've got to correct the financial system.
Mm-hmm.
It's not working, and if it's not working, then they'll have to do something else. Put us in chain, make us enslaved in something, or what? What are they planning? That's my question. What are they planning?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
scared to think of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to me, the idea of having a vote, a vote was a very difficult thing to actually achieve. In fact, in Britain, in Britain, I was reading the history of actually allowing normal, average people the vote progressed over hundreds of years, and even the women's suffrage was only in the 1800s that women were given the vote, and it worked through. And I mean, you start looking at it and you're thinking, hang on, the vote, just having a vote took probably 200 years, 300 years, and even having a stable representative government where the communities could actually elect. I mean, there was this whole argument that went on and on and on in Britain in order to recognise that each individual adult is entitled to have some say in what actually transpires in government and affects them. If there's no effective representation, why should there be taxation? If they don't have a say in it, surely. And of course, the argument, barons and knights and sheriffs and all that sort of stuff was about representation. And the argument between the king and the parliament went on and on and on. Some vying for the king, some vying for the parliament. But in the end, the parliament won. Taxation vested. The right to establish laws was vested in the parliament. But it still took a long, long time to get the parliament to actually be representative of the people. And it's no different with industry. Industry now is such a community event. You build a car manufacturing industry, you've got to have a steel manufacturing industry, you've got to have power generation, you've got to have coal harvesting, and of course all behind that you've got food. These are all community functions. There might be an individual who owns the farm or shareholders who own the industry, but the fact is, in the end, these are community assets, and it's the communities that go to work to produce the cars, that produce the industry, that produce the food. Communities work together with technology. The rain, who owns the rain? Is it no different than who owns the technology? It's the same thing if the technology's there. And that's why handing over our industry to third world countries is absurd. We should be having our own industry, having our own machines, our own power generation, our own robots, and then an effective financial reflection of that so that we're actually able to purchase what we produce. Eve.
Yes. Countries. I had a saying in my car, on my car, when I had a steel car, but I got an aluminum car, so my signs don't stick to the magnetic, don't stick on the car. But I'll probably change that soon. But I had many signs on my car many years ago, or a few years ago, not many, but I had like death to taxes, income taxes, robbery. But I had one that says the country must create the money for the people,
Mm-hmm.
and and I mean exactly that. We've gone so far as to even have witness of, let's say, people like John F. Kennedy, uh, Abraham Lincoln, uh, all these guys. They created their own money,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but there was somebody behind the scenes. The evil one was behind the scene. The evil person, the evil, and he says, you know what? They're not going to be able to do that. Even somebody said last week, a couple of weeks ago, if they become prosperous, that'll be terrible.
Mm-hmm.
If the people become prosperous, it'll be the worst thing that ever happened. Maybe he meant to themselves,
Mm-hmm.
because now they wouldn't be able to be the boss. They wouldn't be able to be as powerful as what they are now. We want a king. We want uh, somebody to lead us, yes. But the power that they have now is for evil things,
Mm-hmm.
not good things.
Mm-hmm.
Like we talk about the systems. The systems were made for men, not men for systems. And these elites control the systems, and they subdue the human being to bow down to this system. Uh, we're not going to see it enough. I think in our lifetime, we're going to keep saying it. We're going to keep advertising it. We're going to keep promoting it. The country has got to create the money for the people,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got to defend yourself when you say that, because they say, "What are you talking about? You can't trust the government." It's you're stuck between a rock and a hard place kind of thing. But you can't trust the government. Well, then who can we trust? We
Mm-hmm.
don't. Then we don't vote for a government. We'll
Mm-hmm.
vote for another body that will take care of us. That's what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Either a king or somebody that can love the people and say, okay, we're gonna make it better now. We're gonna do this in a better way.
mm,
So I think that we have a long ways to go, but I think that we're putting some good pointers out there that people kind of ask questions, uh, and they receive us a little bit better kind of thing because yeah, everybody says yeah, I know, that's terrible, the debt, yeah. So maybe you just got to give him the solution, and hopefully somebody's going to come along and it's been done before and save the world that way, like educate the population.
mm. That's an interesting point, Eve, because I know that there has been step changes in history. Um, Stephenson's rocket, when he was actually able to harness steam energy and put it into locomotion energy. And I think of Nikola Tesla with the electric motor, rotating magnetic field within the electric motor. It was Tesla who designed that. And of course, that brought in alternating current, alternating power. The original NEU, the original generators for Niagara Falls were actually DC. But once Tesla had demonstrated the feasibility of AC, then those original generators were thrown out. And so instead of having a multitude of wires going across the city buildings, you're able to provide a lot more power with smaller cables. So there has been new technology and step changes in history for sure. And in my view, the issue is we do have robotics, we do have automation, we do have advanced control, we have masses of resources, but at the same time, we are, because of if you like, a system that doesn't actually liquidate the cost of production, and that is the financial system doesn't liquidate it because of the methods of issuing debt money instead of credit money. Because of that, industry is forever competing for markets. And in that competition, of course, price comes into it. So shoddy products are produced instead of building longevity. You mentioned an aluminium car that doesn't rust rather than a steel car, and that makes good sense to me. Also lighter. So all these things are we could actually revisit and rethink. And I think that the environment can actually find a lot of answers in reorientating the financial system to be in equilibrium. The social dividend is about that. It's about placing sufficient spending power in the hands of the individuals in community to buy what the community actually makes. It's so, so important. And at the moment, it's not. You only need to go to the debt clock. Have a look at it. It's not going down. It's not standing still. It's continuing to climb. And that's because the financial system is geared and designed in this fashion to impose debt. It always has. And if you like, the national debt of Britain, 1694, was established with the Bank of England, the Tonnage Act. But if you go prior to then, you'll find that the Brits actually had, I believe a loaf of bread was the same price for 600 years, and they were using a thing called tally sticks as a method of money, a tally stick. And so they'd mark the stick and it would have a certain value, and then the stick was torn in half, and one half was held with the king or the parliament, and the other half was used in the community as a method of payment, as a method of exchange, a tally stick. And since the method of, if you like, banking, modern banking, has gone into private hands, so has the debt, the national debt. And it's got to the stage now where the world debt is in the trillions, hundreds of trillions. And of course that's ridiculous. It's absurd. We've gone down this path too far. It's a never-ending path, and it gets to the stage where the individual, and if you like, the administration, the communities no longer have confidence in it, and so society collapses. And that's where we're heading. We're heading towards a societal collapse through debt. We need to actually turn back and orientate the financial system to be in equilibrium. then the environmental answer, the actual pillage and rape of this earth, is put into proper perspective. And we only then, because we're not chasing dollars, because we can buy what is already made. I mean, it's not rocket science, but in some ways it is, because the our thinking has to be changed. Our thinking has to be renewed. Our minds have to be renewed. Eve.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad to. How can someone? I mean, I, I don't know if I can understand their what they want to do. Gather power, become masters over the human being, the whole universe. I cannot fathom that because I'm not. That's not what we're here for.
Mm,
We're here to help people. So we love people, and we want them to be definitely comfortable, whether it be in schools or bridges or nice towns, nice roads. We all feel like uh, we have to we have an inheritance, and we are the heirs of this inheritance, and it's been forgotten. That's just part of it.
yeah.
That's just part of the when I mentioned to somebody, if I mention it to an elite, not an elite, but let's say if somebody that's well off, they always seem to find that whoa, 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 you have to, you can't share that inheritance. I mean, it belongs to people have invested in this and that. So right away you get a block. But how much? If there's something wrong in my house, so financially, right now it is a little bit under the stress because of the summer. I didn't bring in as much cash to meet my budgets. But what do I do? What do I say? I say, "Oh, geez, I'll have to work harder. Would have to work harder to, I gotta work faster and harder to meet my payments, to meet my expenses." So we all say that. The whole world is like that. We'll have to work harder. We'll have to get a second job. We'll have to do this. We'll have to do that. I mean, how far can it go? The dividend would free us from this madness, what we call slavery,
Mm-hmm,
modern slavery.
mm-hmm,
First, they don't give enough money out, okay, and then the people get upset. Some of them go even to steal from their neighbor, from the banks, from they do whatever they can because they were put in that position. They're actually, I call them victims.
yeah.
They're all in the jails.
Mm-hmm,
A lot of them are free, but the real culprit is free. He's got a tie on and he's waiting to lend you money. He's the one that's gonna save you. All the advertisement on TV, that's all they say. You're richer than you think.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're poorer. You're more in debt than you think. So it's a terrible system. It has to be changed. We're until I pass away. This is what I will denounce the system.
Yeah. No, very, very, very good point, Eve. I will point out that in the 1800s in Britain, there was a time when individuals were actually exploiting the slave trade. They were exploiting it to their own advantage. And of course, picking up slaves from wherever, West Indies, Africa, whatever, and putting them to work on their plantations or whatever it was, they were exploiting them. And in Britain, there came a resolve within that nation that, hang on a sec, I am my brother's keeper. I have no right. I have no right. And Britain itself said that any person who plants their foot on any land that belongs to the Commonwealth is a free man. So the slaves were immediately freed just by arriving on any one of the lands of the British Commonwealth. And they got to the point where it was also illegal for even the people in Britain, from Britain, to exercise slavery around the world. And that to me is most important. It's most important because there was if you like, an ethical awakening of the intrinsic value of each individual, of the right of each individual to find their own place in the sun. And financial slavery is no less slavery than chains and cages. Financial slavery, it's an open air slavery, that's what it is. And nations nowadays are indebted, the whole nation is indebted, impoverished, and they can't achieve the things that they could if the financial system was in equilibrium. This to me is really, really important. The social dividend is part of the answer, but the real answer is loving your neighbour as you love yourself. Eve, thank you so much for today. I've really appreciated the discussion. Do you have any closing comments?
No, we keep promoting denouncing the system and promoting a good one.
Mhm.
We denounce the bad system, which is the financial system, the banking system, but we promote a good system for all. It's a thing of the past that the politician doesn't listen to the people, doesn't work for the people. It's time that we promote that idea. Elections are coming up here soon. I'm going to get involved into talking to a few people, to
Mhm.
quite a few people, and we're going to. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Denounce the bad system and promote a good system. Somehow I'll put it into words or talk to people with kindness
Mhm.
and see what happens.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, Eve, for today. It's a beaut. The social dividend, we've put it out there, we've put it on the table. Why is the social dividend important? Because it places the economic system in equilibrium. Production, consumption, distribution. This is Arnie Luks at the Freedom Forum. Cheers, Eve. Cheers, ladies and gentlemen.
Bye.